Hi guys, welcome to the tutorial to embroider our duck pattern for beginners. Hopefully this tutorial is helpful, and I'm going to be doing a voiceover which is very cringy for me, so please bear with me. I usually don't like to do these, but if they're the most helpful. And I'm recovering from a sickness right now, so excuse any coughing or if my voice is weird. So yeah, here I am just tracing the design from my iPad onto the fabric. If you have the kit that we provided, then you don't have to do this part. It already comes with a sticker, which you're just going to peel the backing of and then stick onto whatever surface you'd like to embroider. It can be the tote, it can be fabric, it can be like a jacket or something, or hoodie if you want. Yeah, possibilities are kind of endless here. So now I'm just securing the pattern I drew onto the hoop and then just tightening it and then adjusting, and then make sure to really pull the fabric so that it's really tight in there, and then just adjusting as necessary. And this is just to make sure that your embroidery won't be warped or kind of like a wrinkly look, which doesn't look as good. So now we're just going to start embroidering. I'm starting off with the yellow thread. And then you can see here that I've split the yellow thread into 3 strands each. So I split it in half. Each kind of floss will come with 6 kind of pieces of thread. And then just because I like my designs a bit like crisp, I find that the less thread that you use, the more crisp the design is, like less fluffy. If you want to use all 6, totally go ahead. Like it'll make it a lot fluffier. And that has like a really nice effect too. But this is just personal preference. And then I'm just going to loop that through the needle, and then I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to speed up the video a little, but I'm just going to start off by outlining the duck. And I'm actually starting with the yellow here, just because I like to work in color sections. So here I'm going to do everything that's yellow, so that's just the outline of the duck here. And I'm using a stem stitch. This is where you kind of start the stitch in the middle of the last stitch, and then it's really useful when you want to do like kind of curved edges. It makes it more smooth. It's hard to see like the breaks, and then you'll see I kind of will manipulate it a bit with my thumb there sometimes. If you pull too tight, it'll be straight, but sometimes I like use my thumb to kind of loosen it a bit, and I feel like that helps create like a really natural look. So I'm just going to go ahead, go around the duck and just fill that out. So as I'm continuing to outline everything in stem stitch, I'm actually at this peak of the wing right here. There's a really sharp curved edge. I'm going to fill that out using a lazy daisy stitch, where you come in through the beginning point and then go down through where you'd like it to end. And then I'm going to come up at the curved part of it, so kind of at the bottom of a U essentially. I'm going to pull that as tight as I can, maybe not too much, but you know, like as tight as you can, and then I'll kind of catch the thread at that U, and then I'll just secure it by placing the stitch back down. This is totally optional. You can continue to do a stem stitch, but sometimes it's very natural for me to do a lazy daisy stitch, so I just do that there. And then I'm just going to fill in the rest of the wing, and then all those little kind of fur marks around the duck, I'm just going to fill them in with the yellow, just using a basic straight stitch. Okay, so now we're moving on to the green section. I'm splitting the green in half as well and just securing that. Sometimes people don't make a knot at the end of their thread. I just do it because it's a lot easier. Like if you don't do it, you just have to hold it. But I just like to do it. It just feels more secure to me. And then here I'm just gonna go in, and for the stem of the flowers, I am actually using a chain stitch, so kind of similar to a lazy daisy, but you're gonna come in through where you started and then go back, or come out through where you are starting and then go back in through that exact same point. And then before you bring all the thread in, you are going to bring the needle to a point where you want the chain to kind of end. So similar to like a U, you're going to put it at the bottom of the U. And then here I'll pull it through and then kind of, I guess, like pull it tighter. So it's like a really tight U, like a O, or maybe not an O, like a really tight U, kind of like a chain. You're making a chain link here. And then when you're bringing that up, because it's a chain, you're going to bring it back down. You're not going to secure like the O like you would a lazy daisy. You would put it back in, and then kind of creates this chain. But hopefully maybe watching it's a bit easier than listening to me try to struggle to explain it. Yeah, but I really like the chain. I feel like it really adds a really nice effect. And especially when it comes to stems for flowers, it's a bit nicer than just doing a basic stem stitch. It just adds a bit more dimension. And especially for this piece, it's a bit simpler. So it's a good way to challenge yourself and get like a good feel of like how tightly you should pull the thread. But by all means, you can definitely use a stem stitch or like a straight stitch, a back stitch even, if like you're not really comfortable with this stitch. But I definitely would try to give it a try. It's a pretty fun one, and it's very popular. It's a very popular one that's used by a lot of embroidery artists. Okay, so here we're just filling in the little stem part of the flower, just using a basic stem stitch. Or sorry, what is this? Kind of like a sand stitch. You're just kind of going in and out to make like a simple base of the flower, like the little stem. And then I just use a lazy daisy stitch to make kind of a curved line. As you can see there, just because I like a little curve to the flower, it adds more flow. And then, yeah, just gonna fill that in for all of them. Alternatively, you can also just use a basic straight stitch or a back stitch to fill this part in. Okay, now we are moving on to the pink section. And this is the petals on the flowers. So there's the two flowers, sorry. And then the flower on the duck's hat. The duck flower hat? Yes, the duck flower hat. Yeah. Okay, so for the flowers, just because they're a bit bigger, I like to use a stem stitch to kind of outline the flower petals. I find that it creates a bit more dimension and separation from the three petals than just doing like a basic satin stitch to fill it in. And then here I also am splitting the thread in half and using 3 just to get that crispiness, as I said earlier. Hopefully I find a better word for this, but I'm going to call it crispy. And yeah, just filling that in with a stem stitch and just going around. I believe I sometimes will use a lazy daisy stitch, but based on watching the video right now, it looks like I'm just doing oh no, there it is, a lazy daisy stitch. Yeah, you can pretty much do that for all of the petals. I don't know why I didn't do that for the first one, but I think it's because I drew it a bit sharper, so I used a stem stitch. But yeah, for the other ones I'm using a lazy daisy stitch. And then I'm just going to fill that in after I outline it, and then it'll like kind of create some dimension, which is nice. Okay, so now we're doing the flower on the duck's head. I kind of struggled with this a little, even though I said this is a beginner pattern. I think the flowers are the hardest part. You can see I'm contemplating there, even in ×2 speed. You know that's a long time. So, yes, I'm using a lazy daisy stitch, and I am outlining the petals before filling it in. It's quite curvy here. See, I'm hesitating. It's scary. But yeah, I would just use a stem stitch here and then a lazy daisy to kind of get those rounded edges. Especially here, because it's kind of nice to see the separation between the petals. So really outlining that before you fill it in would make it really nice. Ooh, sorry, the formatting of this one's weird. I'm really bad at making videos. Yep, that's it. Okay, so here, still in the pink, just doing the blush on the duck. Forgot to mention that earlier. Just using a satin stitch to fill in that little circle. Very cute. That's all I have to say. One day I'll get better at filming videos, and the lighting will be nicer. Okay, probably the most important part. It's the eyeball. We give you a lot of black thread just for this eyeball. So, yeah, it's important. The duck needs eyes. What am I doing here? It looks like I'm using a satin stitch to fill in the eyeball. I'm kind of going in a few times. For my black, it's a bit different. You'll see it comes in like a little ball. It's just because it's cheaper to buy the bigger ball. But you probably have like the regular 6, in which case I would just use 2. You can use 3, but I think with like less thread you have a bit more control, and it's easier to kind of go over and over in it than to like take away, if that makes sense. So I think I go over this a couple times. I'm using a single strand here. Alternatively, you can also use a French knot for the eye. But because this is a beginner one, I figured might as well just use a satin stitch to fill this part in. And then here I'm really concentrating because I feel like you want a circle eye, but you also kind of want some slant to it, like it's like looking in a certain direction. It's kind of hard to explain that over this video, but if you look really closely, it's more of like an oval. You see? Okay, that's it for the black. Moving on to the orange, which is the beak. And here I am, what am I doing? Splitting this in half. Yes. Okay, similar to the flowers, I'm going to outline the duck's mouth. You'll kind of notice that I like to outline things before filling them in. I think it just adds a bit of separation rather than just doing like a flat satin stitch. So it's kind of up to you if you want to outline them. To be honest, I find that I get like cleaner lines and more definition, which I like. It's more of a stylistic choice, if anything. So, yeah, here I'm just kind of outlining the duck. I'm kind of cheating a little and using a lazy daisy stitch for those like little U sections. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, a stem stitch for the bill of it. Yes. And then I'll probably use a lazy daisy stitch at that tip of the beak there as well. And then I'll fill it in using long and short stitches. I think it's nice to use long and short stitches when it comes to animals or just organic things in general. I find that sometimes a satin stitch, which is just like you're kind of using the same length of thread, or I guess same length over and over again to fill something out. I find that it doesn't look as natural, which is nice for geometric shapes and like non-organic things. But for animals, I always like to use a combination of long and short just to get more of an organic feel, because it's an animal, it's alive, lots of textures. So yeah, just filling that in. And then gonna jump ahead now to the last color. This is the last one. I always like to leave filling in to the very end. I'll always outline things first to get a good sense of like what I'm doing, and then I will outline later. But here I'm actually using all 6 threads. And I also do this with the other designs that I do when it comes to animals. When it comes to their fur or like the body, I'll usually use 6, and that's just because I like my animals to be a bit fluffy. So you can use 3 here. It will take a bit more time, but you'll get that kind of like flatter look. But when you use 6, you just get like a really fluffy look to it. It looks a bit wild and messy, but when it comes to animals, that's usually what I like to do. And then honestly, I like to kind of go crazy. I'll kind of do like a map of like the direction of the fur. So usually when I embroider an animal, I'll search up photos on Google Photos, and I'll kind of study the fur pattern of it. And then like based on that, that's kind of how I'll fill it in, because you can see each and every thread, right? And so it would be weird if I had just like gone up and down, like horizontal lines to film this duck. Like it would look super unnatural. Okay, and yeah, now we're done. Yay! Look at that duck, so fluffy. That pretty much concludes the tutorial. Let us know if you have any questions. You can send us a DM or an email, and we will get back to you. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully this provides some clarification. Also, to finish off the sticker, you just need to soak it in water for a bit, and then it'll disappear, and then you kind of have to pick at it actually. But yeah, yay, you're done.